Announcing the arrival of Young Muhammad Datuk Sri Mustafa bin Mohammed, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Economy, Economic Planning Unit, Prime Minister's Department, accompanied by Yang Berbahagia Datuk Saiful Labai Anwar Hussain, Director General, Economic Planning Unit, Prime Minister's Department. From UNDP, I please welcome Yang Berusaha Encik Niloy Banerjee, Resident Representative for Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei Darussalam. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in extending a warm welcome to our guests of honor, and we invite them to take their seats. Salam sejahtera and good morning, YB Datuk Sri, Tan Sri, Datuk, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to the 12th Malaysia Plan Dialogue Series as part of the program 100 Hari Aspirasi Keluarga Malaysia, in collaboration with the Economic Planning Unit of the Prime Minister's Department, EPU. The United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, is proud to co-host the dialogue with the theme Advancing Sustainability in the 12th Malaysia Plan. This is the 6th dialogue in this series. The first 5 were held virtually since early September. The topics ranged from developing the nation in the spirit of Keluarga Malaysia, boosting E&E industry in moving up the value chain, strengthening youth to achieve high-tech nation, bolstering Malaysia aerospace industry, and towards the realization of the 12th Malaysia Plan. My name is Ling Lee, and I'm delighted to be your MC today. It's great to see many leaders of the sustainability agenda and all of us who share deep interest in rebuilding a sustainable and inclusive Malaysia coming together in one room. Thank you for being with us, ladies and gentlemen, on this beautiful Sunday morning. Ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to take this opportunity to give a shout out to our viewers who are joining us via Facebook Live. For your information, Bahasa Isyarat Malaysia interpreter is available throughout the session, and Miss Lucy Lim and Jonah Ong will be our interpreters today. Before we proceed with the agenda for the day, we have a few housekeeping announcements. Number 1, in accordance with COVID-19 event SOP, I kindly request that we keep our masks on at all times, except when speaking on stage. Please also ensure that we maintain appropriate physical distancing. Number two, we'd like to remind all participants to keep your mobile on silent mode throughout the session. Lastly, the water station is located at the back of the room, and the restroom is just on your right as you exit the door. Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Minister, Tan Sri, Datuk, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The 12th Malaysia Plan, with the goal of Keluarga Malaysia, prosperous, inclusive, sustainable, was unveiled by the Honourable Prime Minister, YB Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob on 27 September 2021. Advancing sustainability is one of the three themes of the 12th plan, along with resetting the economy and strengthening security, well-being, and inclusivity. It offers a blueprint in advancing green growth, enhancing energy sustainability, and transforming the water sector. This aspiration is anchored in efforts to uphold Malaysia's commitment to global frameworks such as the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, the Paris Agreement for Climate Change, as well as the Convention on Biological Diversity, among others. Clearly, the sustainability agenda will not only result in a better environment, but also help to the development of an innovative and competitive economy. With this background in mind, we are excited about today's dialogue, and we look forward to your participation. Now, let us kick off the session with an opening remark from Mr. Niloy Banerjee, Resident Representative for UNDP Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Niloy.
Thank you. Good morning. Salam sejahtera dan selamat pagi. Thank you very much, and welcome to everyone who's listening online. Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Mustafa Mohamad, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department Economy. Yang Berbahagia Datuk Saiful Anwar Lebai Hussein, Director General of Economic Planning Unit, EPU. Yang Berbahagia Datuk Dr. Yatima Sirjuman, Deputy Director General Sectoral. Yang Berbahagia Encik Chekodir Ben Baharum, Director, Environment and Natural Resources Division, EPU. Yang Berbahagia Dato Valuvan Velu, Director, Manufacturing Industries, Science and Technology Division, EPU also. And then our distinguished panel speakers, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dr. Zakri Abdul Hamid, Ambassador and Science Advisor to the Campaign for Nature, Chairman of BCSD Malaysia, and a member of the Board of Trustees of Alam, which I think we've all come to know recently. Tan Sri Dr. Jamila Mahmood, former Special Advisor to the Prime Minister on Public Health, and Pro-Chancellor of the Heriot-Watt University, Malaysia, Professor and Executive Director of the Sunway Center for Planetary Health. Dr. Nagulendran Kangayastakarasu, Deputy Secretary General, Planning and Culture of Science, Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, MOSTI. Datin Sri Sunita Rajakumar, Chairperson and Founder of Climate Governance Malaysia. And Dr. Hezri Adnan, Executive Director of MIR, the well-known think tank. Salam sejahtera and selamat datang ke program 100 Hari Asparsi Keluarga Malaysia. Selamat pagi. Saya sangat berbesar hati berada di sini di pagi Ahad yang indah untuk sama-sama merayakan 100 Hari Asparsi Keluarga Malaysia. Bersama dengan tetamu jemputan Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Mustafa bin Mohamad, Menteri di Jabatan Perdana Menteri Ekonomi, untuk membincangkan salah satu topik di dalam Rangkanjagan Malaysia ke-12 melokanjan kemampanan. Dengan semangat keluarga Malaysia, UNDP akan sama-sama membantu dan menjaga pencapaian ekonomi dengan pembangunan yang mampan dan berdaya tahan. Ladies and gentlemen, very, very happy to be here. And it's getting there. It's not there yet. It's getting there. A big congratulations to the government of Malaysia and the Rakyat here. For a truly mainstreamed agenda of sustainability in the national narrative. It's being talked about at every forum that I can see, that I can be part of. It's also being talked about at every forum that I get the chance to observe, watch, or on television. It's on radio while I'm driving along. I think it's become, you have mainstreamed this agenda. This is part of the national narrative now. It's part of the national conversation. And I think that's great. And it's not just policymakers and leaders of society who are here. It's also the ordinary person on the street talking about climate change, which is very, very heartening to see. Even the football team of Johor is wearing a UNICEF t-shirt. So I hope UNICEF is watching. Big shout out to them. But no offense for we got a public holiday, so do forgive us for beating you. But look, the 12th plan. The 12th plan, our commitments at COP26, our commitments at Kunming, the national annual budget that was presented in Parliament in October, are all talking about this agenda and making solid commitments. NDCs from 35% to our climate promise from 35% to 45%, unconditional. At COP26, of course, we signed on to the deforestation and methane agreements. At least we committed. We are also looking at, of course, the big ambitious target of net zero as early as 2050. So, and if I may add, because as you know, UNDP works across 170 countries. We are watching sort of the whole radar screen. This is quite ambitious. No other country, not in this region, not Singapore, not our immediate neighbors, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, have quite the same level of ambition. They're distinctly less ambitious than what we have put out. The electric vehicles issue, I think another a big transformation, and I'll come to it in just a minute. And of course, a big shout out to policymakers for mainstreaming what used to be a UNDP project and has now become an element of fiscal policy, instrument of fiscal policy, the ecological fiscal transfers, which is the compensation given by the federal budget to state budgets for conservation finance, as conservation finance. Because as you know, there's some states have difficulty with their revenue systems because income tax doesn't go to the states, it goes to federal. So this was a compensatory mechanism to protect forests and wildlife. The second issue I want to touch upon is political consensus is building across the board. You saw that the budget passed, at least the policy element of the budget passed in Parliament. And that shows sort of bipartisan, party-neutral support for this agenda. So, and then we see the same energy in civil society. And of course, the UN stands here, UNDP and the UN stand here to help. A few comments on what it'll take to get there. First, the institutional challenges. Again, colleagues, friends, excellencies, the sustainability agenda is not easy to organize in terms of institutional architecture. If you see in our own space, EPU touches the sustainability agenda, Kesa and Katsa touch the sustainability agenda. MPIC, Ministry of Primary Industries, touches the sustainability agenda. Arguably, MITI does too. As you know, climate policy and trade policy are getting inextricably linked, greening supply chains, etc., etc. Even Finance Ministry is an enabler of the sustainability agenda. So, while this is how democracy works, multiple ministries own an agenda, but it's also sometimes difficult to work these out. Additionally, there's a vertical conundrum, right? Federal has jurisdiction over something, states have jurisdiction over protected forests, for example. So there's the horizontal coordination challenge and the vertical coordination challenge. But the good news is, colleagues, this is not new to Malaysia. This is not unique to Malaysia at all. I know we are self-critical on this, but it's not. Trust me, UNDP works in 170 countries, and this institutional difficulties exist everywhere. But there are ways to get around it. And that's what UNDP, for example, can help with. We are looking at different models. Singapore, as you know, set up a dedicated ministry for sustainability. Whereas here, for example, on the land issue, the Land Council is chaired by the Prime Minister. There's no structural change, but multiple ministries and then states and federal sit together in one room and discuss this issue. So there are different models across the spectrum. We have to pick and choose what we like and what works for us and move from there, but not to make that the central part of the debate or let that bog us down. The third issue, if you like, is the technology domain. Friends, colleagues, excellencies, we are not there technologically to make all the transformations we are talking about. And I hope Danshri Jamila and Datinshri Sunita will talk about it a little bit. Many of the technologies we are talking about are either in their infancy or have just not evolved to keep pace. I know this is the welcoming remarks. I'm not supposed to show slides, but I'm itching to. So can I? So I took this picture straight out of Bill Gates's book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. And colleagues, look, the biggest emitter of the 51 or 52 billion metric tons that we are putting in the atmosphere of greenhouse gases, the biggest emitter is manufacturing. Sorry, it's literally from the book, so it's written a bit in layperson's language. So manufacturing is 31% of global emissions. And yet we are making both cement and steel using literally the same technology that we were using, not this at the turn of this century, but the turn of the last century. And they are massive emitters of carbon, as you know. The second biggest is generation of electricity. And then the third is agriculture. All of these will need new technologies which are not available at mass scale or cheaply. Not yet. We've got to do some work here. Of course, we do a lot of work. There's a lot of talk about the mobility question, planes, trucks, cargo ships, cars that you and I drive. But that's a small, actually, 16% only. If everything became green, in fact, if everything became a net carbon sink in the mobility space, we have only conquered less than 1/5 of the problem. So the plea, colleagues, is to not beat ourselves up too much, but to actually be intelligent and sit down and devise solutions. We have to get there technologically. We are not there, and the technology will cost. Let's not be naive. Changing to renewable energy will require investments in the grid. It will require new technologies. As you see, Singapore is now piping in through a 5,000-kilometer undersea cable, solar power generated in Australian solar farms. This will go on stream in 2027, I'm told. Finally, colleagues, I also want to say this will not be easy. We have to bring our rakyat along. It's not easy to be in Dato Shri's shoes or Dato Saiful's shoes right now, because it's going to take a few It's going to take bringing everyone along because there is pain. There will be some shared sacrifices and pain. I have my last slide. I'm going to show this. Can I line up the slide, please? Dr. Nagu, Dato Saiful, you will recognize this. When we kicked off the 12th Malaysia Plan start-off conference in July 2019, it was the first week of July 2019. We had done this research at that time. This is the graph on the left is the global map of petrol prices, pump prices. The red line is Malaysia. You can see we are benefiting from extremely cheap gas here. Gas meaning petrol. And you can see even Thailand is way up there in the yellow line. So this is the global map of petrol prices. And next, flowing from that is the global map of, so Malaysia is the 14th cheapest petrol in the world. And flowing from that, electricity prices. We are also benefiting extremely from electricity subsidies. Malaysia is the 20th cheapest in the world. The red line is Malaysia. You see Thailand, Singapore, and eventually Germany, Denmark. Electricity prices are much higher. I'm not saying this as some elitist, oh, my airplane tickets will go up, the cost of my airplane tickets. Because as you know, if these two parameters change, food will become more expensive. There's a general inflationary pressure. So no matter whether you're a middle-class person in KL or you're Orang Asli in Jelly constituency, you will be paying more when we make these transitions. So guys, we have to bring the Rakyat along. That's my point. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have to bring the Rakyat along. It'll be hard, but we all have to make some sacrifices. So then let me just end on that note. It's not, each one of us has to do our bit, how we live, how we eat, how we consume. We have to teach our children well. We have to be more responsible. It's not just the government's problem, not at all. We've all got to come together for this. It's a huge transformation, a huge transition we're talking about. But we've got to do it. The time is now. So I'll just end with what I started with. Dengan semangat keluarga Malaysia, UNDP akan sama-sama membantu dan menjayakan pencapaian ekonomi dengan pembangunan yang mampan dan berdaya tahan. Thank you very much. Good to see you all here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Niloy, for setting us up on that inviting and positive note. I now invite the Honorable Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Mustafa bin Mohammed, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department for Economy, dipersilakan YB Datuk Sri.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, selamat pagi. Saudari pengacara majlis, Encik Niloy Banerjee, Resident Representative UNDP Malaysia Singapore Brunei Darussalam, Datuk Saiful Anwar, Ketua Pengarah Unit Perancang Ekonomi, para ahli panel yang saya muliakan. Ahli panel ni orang-orang yang tersohor lah, tak perlu kita perkenalkan, diketuai oleh Profesor Emeritus Tan Sri Dr. Zakri, Tan Sri Dr. Jemilah, Datuk Sri Sunita dan Dr. Nagu daripada MUSI. Saya bagi pihak EPU dan UNDP merakamkan setinggi terima kasih kepada ahli-ahli panel yang tersohor kerana bersetuju untuk menjadi tokoh-tokoh yang penting untuk menggerakkan usaha ke arah menyebarluaskan konsep sustainability di negara kita Malaysia. Seperti kita sedia maklum, program ini dianjurkan bersama antara UNDP dengan EPU sempena dengan ekspresi keluarga Malaysia 100 hari, dan saya pertamanya ingin mengucapkan setinggi terima kasih kepada UNDP kerana membuat sekian kali tampil ke hadapan untuk menyahut seruan EPU untuk bersama dalam program yang cukup penting ini. Let me begin by thanking the co-organisers, UNDP, for once again coming forward to demonstrate its commitment for this very important agenda, sustainability. Let me also thank our distinguished panel speakers, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dr. Zakri, Tan Sri Dr. Jamilah, Dr. Sunita, and Dr. Nagu, for having agreed to be on this panel, and of course our moderator, Dr. Hezri, from MIR. To those of you following this program online, let me also welcome you. We've got about 100 participants in this physical get-together at the KLCC. Out there, I believe we got a few hundred. Ladies and gentlemen, the RMK12 was launched in September 2021, 27th of September to be precise. Our role at EPU, firstly, is not only to formulate the policy in the next 5 years, but more importantly, to create awareness, and next, to sustain the interest, the momentum among the Malaysian public, and finally, to internalize some of the values, some of the concepts contained in the 12th Malaysia Plan. A plan remains a plan if it is not well understood. A plan remains a plan if it is not supported. There's no buy-in from the rakyat, from the community. Therefore, we've been doing a number of webinars. This is the sixth so far that we've been having lots of engagements, but in terms of webinars, this is six. We have a few on industry or manufacturing with CSOs, and this one on sustainability. As you know, we've got three teams. We have three teams in the 12th Malaysia Plan: resetting the Malaysian economy, ensuring well-being and inclusivity, and finally ensuring that whatever we do, there is sustainability in our development. So those are the three key pillars of the 12th Malaysia Plan. This seminar, therefore, is consistent with our desire to create a sustainable Malaysia. Firstly, it is important to educate the Malaysian public. It is important to increase awareness among fellow Malaysians on the way forward for Malaysia to be a sustainable nation. This is very important, and this is one reason why we're here this morning. Secondly, it is important to ensure that there is momentum in whatever we do. We do not want this to be a one-off affair. We want this momentum to grow over the next few days, few weeks, few months, a few years. This is very important. It is important to sustain people's interest in the sustainability agenda. But more important, perhaps, is how to internalize, how to ensure that this becomes part of the value system, how to ensure that there's total intolerance, abhorrence for corruption, for environmental degradation, for pollution. So this is a lot more important than the rhetoric. Yeah? The policy is very clear, the rhetoric is there, but what's important is to internalize into every Malaysian the need to preserve, to protect the planet, they say planetary health is important for all of us, and education, of course, begins at home. Education begins from a very young age. Schools will have to play a very important role in this. If you fail to internalize some of these very important values, then there's no future for Malaysia and indeed the world. COP26 has left us, a lot of controversy, expectations. There's been some successes. For example, the deforestation agenda to halt and reverse the process of deforestation by 2030. 114 countries signed this agenda, including Malaysia, the Glasgow Financial Alliance, with funding of about $130 billion US, especially to fund climate change programs. And the ambition, the aim, of course, is to be carbon neutral. The timeline differs from country to country. Some have it at 2050, some have it at 2060. But what's important is that the world now realizes it is important for us to reverse this trend of environmental degradation. In this country, we have rivers which have been polluted. We have to spend a lot of money to clean up some rivers in Malaysia. Some very, very famous examples. I need not share this with you. These are well-known examples in Malaysia. Hundreds of millions of ringgit have been spent to clean up some rivers, because some rivers have been treated as dump sites by many Malaysians. This is a fact. Some forests have been cleared. Some excessive logging, illegal logging has happened in many parts of the country. This is all history. The purpose now, this morning and going forward, is to ensure that we realize the folly. We realize how foolish we've been in the last decades and how important it is to build a sustainable agenda. This is indeed, as mentioned by Mr. Niloy Banerjee, indeed this has been mainstreamed in the 12th Malaysia Plan. I want to assure you that this is not rhetoric. We mean business. Implementation is very important. We started the monitoring of the 12th plan a few days ago. The Prime Minister has chaired the first meeting on the 6th of December. We are very serious in ensuring that all the strategies, objectives, all the targets contained in the 12th Malaysia Plan are achieved. But we need help. We need help from everyone. We need help from young students. We need help from CSOs. One of the very important departures from the past is this very strong statement from the Prime Minister that we are going to mainstream CSOs in the formulation of policy and also in the implementation of policies and in environment. We recognize the very important role of CSOs. We have here with us Tan Sri, Dr. Zakri, Tan Sri Jamila, Dr. Tan Sri Sunita, and Dr. Nagu. These are some of the key personalities in Malaysia who have played a very important role in furthering the sustainability agenda. I want to assure you that the government of Malaysia will work closely with you. We have given this assurance. The statement came from nothing less than the Prime Minister himself, 27 September, that we will mainstream CSOs into the formulation and monitoring of policies. And in the area of environment, we know in the area of climate change and environment, we know that this is an area that many of you have been active. I know that some of you have been quite frustrated. Some of you have been highlighting the underachievements in the last many decades. We acknowledge that. There's been some shortcomings in the past. But with everyone on board, with students from a very young age, with universities, with academics on board, with CSOs, with the government, of course, if we can mobilize all these resources together, if we can unite the whole of Malaysia in fighting not only corruption but also environmental damage, then we are sure of meeting the targets in the 12th Malaysia Plan. We have been successful in uniting Malaysians before. Tunku Abdul Rahman has been successful in uniting Malaysians in fighting the British, and we achieved independence because Tunku was successful in getting the Malays, Chinese, and Indians together, which was a prerequisite for achieving independence. The British told us we need to get every Malaysian to be united, and Tunku was successful in getting Malaysians together. In the aftermath of the riots in 1969, the late Tun Abdul Razak was successful in uniting Malaysia, in formulating and implementing the new economic policy. The new economic policy has some shortcomings, but it's been very successful in creating a better Malaysia. And in the 12th Malaysia Plan, we'll continue with some of this agenda contained in the new economic policy. Inclusivity is a very important agenda of government. We want every Malaysian to be part of this success story in Malaysia. We want every Malaysian to be involved in creating a more sustainable Malaysia. In the past, we've been successful, not only in Malaysia, in the world. The UN, 1946, was created out of disgust for war, the atomic bomb, the intolerance for the damage done by the Second World War. And nations came together in 1946 to form the UN, successor to the League of Nations. There's been some successes on the world stage. Now, of course, people are beginning to question the effectiveness of the UN, the World Bank, and the IMF. Let us come together in Malaysia and also on the world stage for this very important cause to create a more sustainable world, to ensure planetary health, to ensure that every generation going forward will enjoy clean air, will enjoy a better environment. As you know, as we all agree, success is not only measured in dollars and cents, success is not only measured in terms of per capita income, success is not only measured in terms of success in developing the manufacturing sector. More and more going forward, success will be measured, happiness will be measured, well-being is going to be measured in terms of environmental quality, in terms of the quality of air that we breathe, in terms of our rivers, in terms of our waters, in terms of the sea, oceans, and many other parameters. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very important program for us at EPU. Once again, I would like to thank the UNDP for coming together. Let us stand united in the same way that the Tunku was able to unite all Malaysians. to fight for independence in the same way that the late Tun Abdul Razak was successful in uniting Malaysians to implement the new economic policy. Let us all unite to create a more sustainable Malaysia. And this is the time. Now is the time. We have the 12th Malaysia Plan, which has been introduced. Next year is a few days away. Let's make this our New Year pledge. The year 2022 is going to be a year in which Malaysians are going to be united to fight environmental degradation, to ensure that we all stand united in ensuring that we have a climate that is sustainable, to ensure that we have good air to breathe, to ensure that we reduce and eliminate pollution, to ensure that we create a better environment, to ensure that our forests continue to be sustainable, and to ensure that we create a more sustainable Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, sustainability is a very important agenda. The third theme of the 12th Malaysia Plan, inclusivity, is another important agenda. Reform is yet another important agenda. In the context of reform, in the context of reform and in the context of climate change, let us think of ways in which we can reform governance. Governance is not only about good practices, not only about administration, it's also about getting everyone involved, every Malaysian involved, from those in primary schools to adults, those in the universities. Let us, in the year 2022, get everyone involved in ensuring that we have a better environment to enjoy in Malaysia, to ensure that we create a more sustainable Malaysia, and indeed to ensure that we create a more sustainable world. On that note, sekali lagi saya mengucapkan sendiri terima kasih kepada UNDP kerana bersama dengan kami dan menjayakan program ini, dan saya sekali lagi merakamkan setinggi terima kasih. Ya, kita perlukan lebih banyak lagi tokoh-tokoh. Kita hari ini ada 4 tokoh, Tan Sri, Dr. Zakri, Dr. Jamilah, Datin Sri Sunita dan Dr. Nagu. Kita perlu lebih ramai lagi tokoh-tokoh di kalangan akademik, tokoh-tokoh di kalangan CSO yang tampil ke hadapan, yang menjadi juara, yang menjadi champion kepada agenda alam sekitar, agenda kepada kelestarian alam sekitar, agenda kepada a better Malaysia. Yeah? I'm calling out to those of you out there, let us come forward, lebih ramai lagi tokoh-tokoh untuk mendahului, untuk champion, untuk menjuarai agenda ini, dan lebih ramai tokoh yang menjuarai agenda ini daripada sekolah sampailah kepada universiti. Saya percaya bahawa agenda ini akan dapat dilaksanakan dengan jayanya. Kalau tidak, kita akan mewarisi satu negara yang porak-poranda, satu negara yang tidak lestari, satu negara yang tidak dapat dinikmati oleh anak cucu kita. Terima kasih saya ucapkan sekali lagi kepada para ahli panel, terima kasih kepada anda sekalian dalam dewan ini, dan terima kasih kepada semua yang mengikuti program ini online. Terima kasih. Dengan itu, dengan segala sukacitanya, saya merasmikan program EPU bersama dengan UNDP bertajuk Advancing Sustainability. Terima kasih. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Yang Berhormat Dato' Sri Mustafa bin Mohamad, for your inspiring speech and a call for us to all unite behind the sustainability agenda. I ask that Dato' Sri, you please remain on stage, and I'll invite Dato' Saiful Anwar Lubai Hussein to come on stage to accompany the YB Minister to accept a memento from UNDP. I invite now Mr. Niloy Banerjee to come on stage to present the memento. Thank you very much, Mr. Niloy and YB Dato' Sri. You may now kindly return to your seat. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the crux of today's event. To give us an overview of the sustainability elements in the 12th plan, we have Yang Berusaha Encik Che Khodir bin Baharum, Director of the Environment and Natural Resources Division, EPU. Dipersilakan Encik Che Khodir.
Terima kasih saudara pengacara majlis. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dan selamat pagi kepada semua yang hadir. Yang berhormat Datuk Seri Mustafa Muhammad, Menteri di Jabatan Perdana Menteri Ekonomi. Yang berbahagia Datuk Saiful Anwar bin Lebai Hussein, Ketua Pengarah Unit Perancangan Ekonomi Jabatan Perdana Menteri. Yang berbahagia Datuk Nur Azmi bin Dirun, Timbalan Ketua Pengarah Makro EPU. Yang bahagia Datuk Yatimah binti Sarjiman, Timbalan Ketua Pengarah Sektoral EPU. Ketua-ketua bahagian dan pegawai kanan, respected panelists Mr. Niloy Banerjee, Profesor Tan Sri Dr. Zakri Abdul Hamid, Tan Sri Dr. Jamilah binti Mahmud, Dr. K. Nagulendran, Datin Sri Sunita Rajakumar, Dr. Hezri Adnan, ladies and gentlemen. Next please. Distinguished delegate, ladies and gentlemen. This quote put forth the relationship between humans and nature. And when we use nature for our development and subject nature to their demise, in the end it is us, humans, who are on the losing end and no longer have thriving earth for our children and their future. This was also part of the message in the critically acclaimed book, The Silent Spring, by Rachel Carson, in describing the effects humans have on the natural world, which pave the foundation for sustainability around the globe. Next, please. Ladies and gentlemen, sustainable development has been at the heart of Malaysia's development approach since 1970s, with emphasis on eradicating poverty, improving the well-being of the people, providing universal access to education, and caring for the environment. The sustainable development concept has been adopted as early as the first Malaysia Plan in 1966 to 1970. This concept was further strengthened in the third Malaysia Plan in 1976 to 1980 through the enforcement of the Environmental Quality Act in 1974 and the establishment of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Environment in 1975. Malaysia's journey toward sustainable development intensified in the 1970s when the new economic policy to eradicate poverty and restructure societal imbalance was launched. All subsequent 5 years National Development Plan has emphasized the element of sustainable development. Next, please. The 12th Plan in 2021 and 2025 set a clear strategic direction to strengthen the development trajectory in the planned period based on the spirit of Keluarga Malaysia. The plan is aligned with Wawasan Kemakmuran Bersama 2030, which aim to transform Malaysia into a united, prosperous and dignified nation, as well as the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development through the whole-of-nation approach. Its formulation has taken into account the strategies in the National Recovery Plan, which will continue to be aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, or 2030 Agenda. Next, please. The 12th plan is founded on the three key themes focusing on the resetting the economy, strengthening security, well-being and inclusivity, as well as advancing sustainability. These themes are supported by 4 catalytic policy enablers, which focus on developing future talent, accelerating technology adoption, as well as strengthening the public service, paving the way for a prosperous, inclusive and sustainable nation. The government undertook a mapping exercise to align all 17 SDGs to the 12th plan, and this will continue for the 13th plan to support the implementation of SDGs. Implementing sustainable development goals through the National Development Planning Mechanism generate at least 3 distinct benefits. First, Malaysia will have a clear direction for the implementation of sustainable development goals. Secondly, projects and programs can be crafted to support both the national and the sustainable development agenda. And last but not least, allocation of resources and funding can be readily made available for the said projects and programs. Thus, resource mobilization and utilization can be more efficient while facilitating monitoring for evaluations. Ladies and gentlemen, there are 14 game changers in the 12th Malaysia Plan, which represent new and innovative ideas that will fundamentally change the approach of national development. The game changer will ensure Malaysia attains the objective of Wawasan Kemakmuran Bersama 2030, namely sustainable growth, along with fair and equitable distribution across income groups, ethnicities, region, and supply chains. Successful implementation of these game changers will eventually accelerate Malaysia's sustainability agenda. The third theme of the 12th plan focuses on advancing green growth as well as enhancing energy sustainability and transforming the water sector. In the next 5 years, we will see a nationwide shift to more sustainable economic practices and lifestyle that value natural endowments and environmental health. This shift will address the issue of climate change, unsustainable consumption and production, and loss of biodiversity, lack of coherence in the implementation of policies, and inefficient water resource management. In the plan, green growth will be augmented to achieve sustainable and resilient. In this regard, the need to share responsibility in moving toward a low-carbon nation will be emphasized, while more equal benefit sharing from the utilization of natural resources will be promoted. Energy and water will be managed holistically and sustainably, taking into account the supply and demand of these resources. The energy sector will address the energy trilemma, while the water sector will focus on ensuring water security for all. Megatrends such as globalization, urbanization, and technology advancement will be managed sustainably to ensure minimal impact on the environment and biodiversity. Ladies and gentlemen, this plan will advance green growth by implementing a clean, green, and resilient development agenda through a whole-of-nation approach. The main priorities in achieving this agenda are: first, implementing low, clean, and resilient development. Second, managing natural resources efficiency to safeguard natural capital. And thirdly, strengthening the enabling environment for effective governance. In supporting this, Malaysia has announced a goal for the country to achieve a net zero GHG emission targets as early as 2050. In achieving a low carbon, clean and resilient development, the strategies include developing enabling instruments such as carbon pricing, accelerate transition to the circular economy, promoting green and resilient cities and townships, and enhancing green mobility and low carbon energy. In managing natural resources efficiently, emphasis will also be placed on conserving ecosystem, protecting species and genetic resources, ensuring the effort for sustainable utilization of resources and benefit sharing, and conserving water resources. In strengthening environmental governance, the focus will be given to scaling up green financing and instilling a sense of shared responsibility among stakeholders. In the 12th plan, Malaysia aims to transform itself from conventional linear economy model to the sustainable circular economy model. As such, embracing the circular economy has been emphasized as a game changer to address the challenge of balancing socio-economic development and environmental sustainability. The public and private sector will be encouraged to adopt and integrate the Sustainable Development Goal and the environment, social and governance principle in their decision making. Apart from creating green jobs opportunities and ensuring resource security, the circular economy will reduce waste generation, pollution, greenhouse gas emission, and dependency on natural resources. To expedite the transition to circular economy, an enabling ecosystem will be put in place, while more sharing economic model will be promoted. The use of recycled materials and the recycling of production waste will be increased, while the responsibility of producers in managing their end-of-life products will be extended. All of these initiatives will expand the green economy and facilitate the attainment for a low-carbon future. Ladies and gentlemen, with regard to the energy and water sector, emphasis is placed on sustainable utilization of energy and water to ensure the security of supply as well as to create more economic opportunities. Effort will be undertaken to improve institutional and regulatory frameworks. A comprehensive national energy policy will be introduced to strengthen the oil and gas and electricity ecosystem. Management of the water sector will be improved by encompassing multidimensional approaches. Measures will be undertaken to enhance stakeholder participation, governance, and decision-making, as well as financial and infrastructure sustainability. Energy sustainability and water sector transformation will support growth in attaining development for all, in line with the Wawasan Kemakmuran Bersama 2030, as well as the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development on clean and water sanitation, which is Goal 6 of SDG, and affordable and clean energy, which is Goal 7 of SDG. The government recognizes that there is a need for a comprehensive transformation of the water sector to ensure water security and sustainability. In effective management of water resources, inadequate understanding and lack of awareness have created environmental and social challenges which have impacted economic growth. The water sector will be restructured to enable it to be a significant contributor to national growth and wealth creation through a 20-year transformative agenda. In the 12th plan, the game changer accelerating the adoption of integrated water resource management will lay the foundation for a comprehensive water transformation agenda. Initiatives under this game changer include strengthening governance and enforcement through revision of existing laws and introducing new ones, establishing an integrated center for data, R&D and commercialization and innovation, adoption of the whole-of-nation approach to instill a sense of ownership and responsibility in protecting and conserving these valuable resources, and improving the financial sustainability of water service providers will be improved through a tariff setting mechanism. Ladies and gentlemen, it is targeted that by 2025, at least 10% of coastal and marine areas and 20% of terrestrial and inland water areas are conserved through the gazettement and other effective area-based conservation measures. 30% of renewable energy of total capacity will be achieved, and there will be 98% coverage of access to clean and safe water in the rural area. In conclusion, The 12th plan was drafted bearing in mind current changes in the global and domestic economic landscape, as well as the need to address the current issue for a brighter future of Keluarga Malaysia. With the objective of Keluarga Malaysia prosperous, inclusive and sustainable, the 12th plan outlined a comprehensive strategic plan to enable Malaysia to become a high-income, high-tech nation with a skilled workforce toward achieving inclusive growth without compromising the environment. With that in mind, Malaysia announced a goal for the country to achieve a net zero GHG emission target as early as 2050. The detail of other measures for carbon reduction will be announced once a review of long-term low-carbon development strategies is finalized by the end of 2022. The government will work earnestly to improve the well-being of the rakyat and ensure that no one is left behind. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I end my presentation and thank you for your kind patience. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Encik Khadir, for the comprehensive presentation. Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Minister, Tan Sri, Datuk, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. With that, we will now advance to the panel dialogue. I first invite the panelists and moderator to come on stage upon introduction. Joining us as the moderator today is Dr. Hazri Adnan. Dr. Hazri is the Executive Director of the Malaysian Institute of Economic Research, MIER. He is an ardent development specialist focusing on natural resources governance, sustainability strategy, and green economy. Dr. Hazri is formerly the Chief Executive Officer of the Langkawi Development Authority. In the panel, we have four giants in the sustainability scene. It gives me great honor to introduce our first panelist, Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Zakri Abdul Hamid, Ambassador and Science Advisor to the Campaign for Nature, Chairman of Business Council for Sustainable Development Malaysia, and a member of the Board of Trustee of Amanah Lestari Alam. The second panelist, Tan Sri Dr. Jamilah Mahmud, former Special Advisor to the Prime Minister on Public Health, Pro-Chancellor of the Harriet Watt University Malaysia, Professor and Executive Director of Sunway Centre for Planetary Health. Our third panelist, Dr. Nagulendran Kangayat Karasu, Deputy Secretary General for Planning and Culture of Science from the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, MOSTI. Finally, Tatin Sri Sunita Rajakumar, Chairperson and Founder, Climate Governance Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our distinguished panelists on stage and please take your seat. So all our participants, if you have questions during the Q&A session, please enter your question on Slido. The code for today's session will be 12MP. I will now hand the floor to Dr. Hazri for the panel conversation. Dr. Hazri.
Thank you, Ms. Ling. Yang Berhormat Menteri Datuk Sri Mustafa Mohamed, Datuk Saiful Anwar, the Director General of the Economic Planning Unit Malaysia, Mr. Niloy Banerjee, the Resident Representative of the United Nations Development Programme. It gives me great pleasure to be in this room today with distinguished panelists and also with all of your audience here. It's been a while since we've been able to interact as humans, as face-to-face interaction. We've been doing virtual meetings for at least a year or more than that, actually. So it is a privilege to be here today. I would like to delve straight into the topic of the discussion of the panel today. The panelists have been generously introduced by Ling. I think without any reference to the age of any of the panelists, we have on the stage today more than 100 years of wisdom on advancing sustainable development across all the sectors, from biodiversity to climate change to public health and to climate action. So we will have an interesting 1 hour, I hope. And as you know, has been described by Encik Koder, the sort of evolution of the focus on sustainable development is not, of course, it didn't start last year. It started way back in the 1970s, perhaps, with I think the first appearance in National Plan or Malaysia Plan was the third Malaysia Plan. There was a dedicated chapter on environment, if you remember Tan Sri Zakri. And it has evolved over the years to focus on balanced development. I think in the 12th Malaysia Plan is yet the strongest expression of sustainability. It is one of the key objectives of the 12th Malaysia Plan, with prosperous, inclusive and sustainable Malaysia by 2030. And it makes very strong appearances in the chapters as well, and also in the as one of the game changers. And I did a quick search on the document, which is a 500-page document. The word circular economy, for instance, appeared more than 70 times. So that speaks volume of the emphasis on the environment and sustainable development in this Malaysia Plan. And I would like to begin the conversation this morning by just going through maybe a quick 1 minute with our distinguished panelists on what is your sort of favorite angle in the 12th Malaysia Plan. It is a thick document. I actually put it on a weighing machine. It weighed about 1.9 kilogram as a document. It is not just physically heavy, but in terms of the aspiration. So, Tan Sri Zaki, if I could begin with you, what's your take on the 12th Malaysia Plan?
Thank you, Chair. Assalamualaikum. And a very good morning to everyone. First is 1 minute. Yeah?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen and YB Minister, I'm a student of the environment, in particular biodiversity, for a long time. In fact, I was one of the original negotiators of the Convention on Biological Diversity, and I was helping the country work out our agenda during the Earth Summit. For 2 years, in fact, I was a negotiator. I did a lot of work, but when Rio came, I was left behind because I was low on the totem pole. But that's all right. It's a learning experience. At that time, the environment, even sustainable development, which was introduced by Madam Brundtland in 1987, was not known in Malaysia, let alone climate change and biodiversity. I remember there was a joke when Dr. Mahathir was chairing a cabinet meeting. One of his colleagues asked him, "What is this biodiversity?" So his answer was, "Those things that crawl in the jungle." So that's a kind of situation then. But now let me congratulate you, YB Topa, EPU, and all the others, and UNDP, who have worked so hard. And I was just amazed looking at the 12 Malaysia Plan, which captured the 3 elements of sustainable development. It was a beautiful plan, but as all of us would know, it's aspirational. So the question is, how do we go about it? This is where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri Zaki. So how do we make it work will be the centerpiece of our discussion later. But I would like now to invite Tan Sri Jamila, as someone who straddled, the humanitarian agencies, and now you are chairing heading the new institute at the Sunway University. What would be your take on the 12th Malaysia Plan? A quick one.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum, Yang Berhormat and distinguished guests. My first impression when I read the 12th Malaysia Plan, I must be honest, I felt there was a lot of heart in it. It felt much more sincere than the previous Malaysia plans, in the sense that you could sense that whoever was behind, working behind the scenes to make the publication and the plan ready, thought through a lot of the challenges we're facing. And therefore, at a personal level, I'm delighted. I'm especially delighted that planetary health is mentioned 7 times, and circular economy and others that have been mentioned. So there are some very concrete things in the 12th Malaysia Plan, but there's also now the challenge of how you make it a reality. So this is where I think the 12th Malaysia Plan must not be seen on its own. it must be seen together with the budget, with the aspirations of shared prosperity, and therefore this call for partnership is very, very key. So I think that, I can say to Yang Hormat Minister and everyone involved in this, and all of us in this room, that the 12th Malaysia Plan must relate to us as individuals. And only until you get that link with us, we will make it happen. So congratulations. It's a really solid 12th Malaysia Plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thanks to Dr. Jamila. So it's not just a 50,000 feet emphasis that we should pay attention to, but also at the 5-meter feet, where it's at the self level. This is altitude leadership that I think we have to power on in the next few years. Dr. Nagulendran is, of course, an old friend and also one of the trailblazers in the public service, pushing for the more stronger representation of environment conservation. Dr. Nagu, what's your take? What's your impression?
Right, thank you, Dr. Hezri. Good morning, everyone, Topa and everyone. Well, congratulations to EPU for the 12th Malaysia Plan. But I think Malaysia, we should pat ourselves on our back, because actually we had pursued and spearheaded sustainable development, as Cik Ode correctly put it in our earlier plans. The third plan, thought way before even Madam Brundtland had thought about the term sustainable development. He had concepts of it enshrined in a document dated in the 70s. So I think we are continuing the legacy. The 12th Malaysia Plans further augments our Great Grown agenda, and it shows that we need a whole-of-nation approach that we have heard through the many interventions this morning. But I think what's really important, and Mosti, is particularly thank you that you have got a policy enabler too, which directly points out to the role of science. But come COVID, I think COVID was a wake-up call. COVID, as we have heard, the Silent Spring that came out in 1962, had showed that we do not know enough. And I think here is a potential for us to have a hybrid between modern sciences and traditional knowledge systems to drive better interventions towards a better planet and sustainable development. I think this needs to take center stage where we need this hybrid synergy of local knowledge plus modern knowledge. I'll just do that intro now and come back with other points. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nagulendran. And last but not least is Datin Sri Sunita Rajkumar, who's now chairing the climate governance in Malaysia. And she's presenting the corporate Malaysia. What's your take on 12th Malaysia Plan?
So I think it's, thank you so much for having me here and also for EPU's support. I think it's safe to say that EPU has been such a strong partner to business. Although we started the first series of the roundtable sessions on the 12th of April, but by 5th of May at a CGM webinar, Tokpa came out and he used two phrases which resonated widely within society and business. He said that businesses have a social license to operate, and that really had ripple effect. And then he also said, and this was a new concept, you might find it hard to believe, but in May, it was groundbreaking. And he said, at some stage, Malaysia needs to be carbon neutral. And of course, we all now know on the 27th of September, the Prime Minister announced this. So we really want to thank EPU for being such a strong partner for the mention of CGM in the 12th Malaysian report. I really look forward to this commitment to all of government, whole of society approach for a crisis, an existential crisis that we are facing with no silver bullet, with no roadmap, where we all have to work together on. Thank you so much to EPU.
Thank you, Datin Sri Sunita. This second round will now sort of delve deeper into a number of focus areas. And we would like to begin with Tan Sri Zakri. Tan Sri, the 12th Malaysia Plan is going to be, we're going to see one of the largest, perhaps, development expenditure, over 400 billion going to be committed to the implementation of the 12th Malaysia Plan. And, but again, we know for a fact that, this figure is not enough. If you look at the water sector alone, if you project until 2040, about anywhere from 200 to 300 billion ringgit will be needed just for the water sector. So as someone who's traversed the international scene and still one of the leaders of the sustainable development internationally, what are the possible sources of funding internationally that we can tap from?
Thank you, Chair. I'm also delighted and a bit frustrated on the fact that our commitment, like for instance the increase in carbon from 35 to 45% without unconditionally, is very praiseworthy really. That shows that Malaysia is committed. You remember the debate, that funding from the international community, in particular from the global north, is subject to new and additional funding and also technology transfer. So I'm sure we got some, but it's not enough, isn't it? But that also we must strongly express our gratitude. Not I have some criticism afterwards, but this commitment itself is great, But we should aspire to keep on getting this funding. All is not lost. During the Glasgow Climate Pact, there was a declaration that this 200 billion is still forthcoming. There is a deadline in 2020, but they will come around, at least they say by 2025. As a small country, Chair Hazri, I think we should continue to do what we need to do, but I don't think we should really bang on that, because we have been disappointed before. After all this global warming is a historical thing. It's not from us in the developed South. It's from the industrialized country. Since in Glasgow, 200 years ago, with the steam engine, and now we are part of it. So maybe that's enough, yeah? So we should be hopeful. Just one last point, still on biodiversity. Recently at the UN General Assembly in New York in September, there was a pledge about, I think, $9 billion US dollars, from the philanthropists.
Ladies and gentlemen, sorry, Tan Sri Zakri, Yang Berhormat Datuk Sri Minister will leave us for a separate engagement. Thank you so much, Datuk Sri.
Thank you. I'm done. Yeah.
Thank you, Ling. Thank you, Datuk Sri, for joining us at least in the first half of the conversation. Thank you, Tan Sri Zakri, for that. So you are cautiously optimistic of the potential source of funding from the international scene. I would like to go to Dr. Nagu next with the emphasis on technology. It's one of the enablers, I think one of the 4 enablers is technology. And coming from MOSTI, what do you see? Where should we prioritize, and how do you enhance our innovation ecosystem to advance sustainability?
Right. Thank you, Hazri. I mean, and as we know, it's a pillar that is going to enable the 12th Malaysia Plan. I think one area that maybe we would like to emphasize is that MOSTI is focusing on cities for consumption and climate action and environmental action. Because in Malaysia, our cities take up only about 4.7% of our land area, but we have got about 77% of our population there. So many interventions should be done at this area, and I'm quite happy to hear the low carbon mobility blueprint now taking center stage. And from MOSTI's perspective, we are now spearheading some technology. Like, for example, we are coming up with green hydrogen through Nano Malaysia. We have just came out with a prototype hydrogen car. I mean, the whole EV ecosystem is huge. It's big players, but I think Malaysia has got a niche area we can go in because you've got the powertrain, you've got the electric motor, but the capacitors. So we just launched national energy storage systems by Nano Malaysia, which Malaysia could play a big role in this region in the whole EV ecosystem to drive sustainability. And talking about cities, why I'm emphasizing a bit on cities is there's a whole huge room in Malaysia's context on urban biodiversity. And that's something that we realized during the COVID, our neighbors, I won't mention who, neighbors down south, were quite privileged because they were looking at community farming, urban farming, and linking it to the bigger ecosystem. And we've got a lot of policies in place, like the Central Forest Spine, which we need to link up. The policies are intact, but it needs implementation. I've got 2 other points which I will come back to later regarding technology, because I've spoken about cities, but I think the social innovation part is something that I'd like to take up later.
In the next round.
Right.
Thank you, Dr. Nagu. So there are initiatives being rolled out now, and of course there's also this national low carbon master plan, which is going to be driving the city agenda in the next few decades as well, not just in the 12th Malaysia Plan. Datin Sri Sunita, you are a strong proponent of low carbon Malaysia. So the climate action in the 12th Malaysia Plan, is there enough or should we strengthen our position? It's just a quick one, if you like.
So very quickly, Hezri, this is the single largest transformation, arguably, that the global economy is going to see. The size of investments needed in order to have this transition. And of course, Minister referred to defense, which is 130 trillion US dollars of capital that is looking for businesses that can make the transition, and it will be diverted away from those businesses that still don't understand the scale of transition that's needed, including decarbonizing our energy systems, re-revolutionizing our food systems, how we communicate, live, play, work, eat, everything needs to change. So profit pools that have existed historically are going to move dramatically in the next few years. And if there are any governments, industries, businesses, households that still don't understand this, it will be very difficult for them to catch up.
No less than trillions, of course. Hundreds of trillions have been mentioned here and there. But where are the money? That's a question Tan Sri Zakri is also asking. But before we delve deeper into that, Tan Sri Jamila, the combination of public health, human health, and also planetary health is perhaps a belated focus in international domain. And this is a new center that you are heading. If you can say a bit more about how this relates to the 12th Malaysia Plan.
Thank you very much, Hezri. I think, COVID-19 is still with us. It's a huge wake-up call to the whole world, that without health, your economy stalls, your social fabric is completely ripped apart. There's so many other, detrimental effects of the pandemic, and that the pandemic didn't come out of the blue. It is because of man's continuous degradation of forests and environmental degradation, with zoonotic diseases and viruses jumping from one animal to another that has led to us. So we'll use this pandemic as the wake-up call and also the opportunity. So I think that what planetary health is really an approach. It's about bringing the political, environmental, social, health dimensions and economic as well, so that you have human health protected and thriving while the planet is also protected and thriving. You cannot have one without the other. So I think that interdependence is very, very important. But I think that, what we need is really, as was mentioned by Tok Pa earlier, the translational effect of what is in policy to what is action. And I want to say one thing, because I didn't say it earlier. How can the 12th Malaysia Plan be de-jargonized, if I may, so that even any child in school can actually understand what the government is thinking about in this 5-year plan? So I think here is the disconnect. When we're talking about science, it's normally the scientists who understand it. So like you were saying, traditional knowledge, but also de-jargonizing, right? You talk about sustainability. I can guarantee you go around town and ask people what the SDGs are, they don't know. You ask people in government what was COP all about, they probably don't even know what is COP. I'm being very honest here. So I think we really need to do a lot more on that, education at that, very simplified level. And this is what we're trying to do at the Planetary Health Center. Taking the science, de-jargonizing it, making it translational into action.
Thank you, Tan Sri, Dr. Jamila. So communication is key to the socialization of the 12th Malaysia Plan. And I'm reminded of a survey done by WWF Malaysia way back, more than 10 years ago. Questions were asked about many things related to environment, including what is, one of the highest score would be on do you think that we should protect the orangutan and or tigers? People, more than 80% answered correctly, and they managed to point to CITES even. But when it comes to questions like what are the causes of floods, less than 40% answered that correctly. People don't understand the impacts from their behavior. So I think this sort of what you mentioned, the de-jargonization of the terms is very key as we move forward in the next 4 years for the 12th Malaysia Plan. And a point raised by Tan Sri Dr. Jamila is also on the translating the policy, which Tan Sri Dr. Zakri also mentioned about this being an aspirational policy. I'm sure, as we straddle the decades, what are the best practices, Tan Sri or Tan Sri, Dr. Nagu, Datin Sri, that we could, really push forward in the next few years in translating these policies? If there are any best practices that we can highlight, Tan Sri Zakri, maybe.
I'm going to stay put with my mask because the doctor here is doing the same. So all of you should do the same too. I think one of the immediate medium to long term that we should be addressing very, very seriously is CIPA, communication, education, and public awareness. I know on top of that would be the Sunway Center on Planetary Health. That's the ultimate, of course, the universities. But I think we should start from the very basic. We kept saying that, but I wonder to what extent we have been successful in internalizing those concepts that you just mentioned at the kindergarten, at the primary school, and at the secondary school. I remember one time the ambassador of Sweden was lecturing to me on the good practices in Sweden, how they are so successful in promoting sustainable development. They started from the primary school. It's fantastic. Sweden is one. And don't be surprised, even Volvo is opting for electric car by in 10 years' time. And the other country is Japan. We talk about the circular economy. And here you have the 3R, reuse, recycle, and reduce, part of the circular economy. In Japan, they are already doing that. And you guys must have seen some pictures of drains in Japan where those fishes were swimming around in crystal clear water. So why are we not doing that? Why is the Klang River still polluted? And we are quite infamous for having so many dead rivers in our country. So I think we should start from the very basic. So in that context, I think this newly launched Environment Foundation by Bank Pembangunan, Alam, here Tan Sri Jamila and I want to do some marketing. I think we should work from there. I know Dr. Nagu is sensitive about Yayasan Hijau, but please support Alam. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Tan Sri Jamila, would you like to add to that?
I want to give some concrete examples how big policies can be turned into implementable, things. So coming back to Japan, some of you may be aware that there was the Hyogo framework for disaster risk reduction, and then that was followed up by the Sendai framework. And it's really about looking at disaster risk reduction. What are the national action plans? What are the policies that governments can take on and all that? But even before that, if you look at Japan itself, Japan is one of the most high-risk countries in the world in terms of earthquakes. So I always tell people this: earthquakes don't kill, unsafe buildings do. So in Japan, from a very young age, children are already taught what to do in the event that you feel a tremor. So they know exactly what to do, where they should stand, where they should crouch, the drop roll, and things like this. But the second thing is, in any building that's built in Japan, is if it's not retrofitted for earthquake safety, it cannot be insured. So this is how you take the policy and translate it into real action on the ground. The other example I want to give you is on circular economy. So I'm a big fan of donut economics. So I will say it out now. Circular economy is one thing, but the donut economics takes into consideration two very important factors. One is the ecological ceiling. I'm not allowed to show slides. If I show you Malaysia's planetary health boundary violation, you will be frightened. The second is the social floor, the inner circle. So you don't want people to fall into the hole. Now, it's actionable, which is about bringing all the society together. So one example is Amsterdam. Amsterdam has embraced donut economics, and it's the first donut city in the world. We are now in discussions with the state of Perak to see how we can make Ipoh and the Kinta Valley the first donut valley in the world. So what I'm trying to say is let's start piloting some of these big ideas so that you inspire everybody else and it can be easily replicated. So I think that's the way to get things moving.
Thank you. Dr. Dago, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, thank you. While I detail what Tan Sri Zakri and Tan Sri Jamila has said, I'd just like to focus on something that we could focus on. A niche area is grassroots social innovations. And I'd like to highlight here our colleagues in Borneo, Sabah and Sarawak. They've done tremendous jobs. Sarawak Biodiversity Centre, through their centre, they have mainstreamed traditional knowledge and the resources, local Malaysian resources, to main stage, which is great. And when I did a Google search or did a document search of the 12th Malaysia Plan, I did not find the word social innovation. But the spirit of it is mentioned, but I think in the midterm review, we maybe can look at it because I think the pandemic brought us to take a step back and to look that globalization has its flaws. And we as a country, we must look through our lenses what our niche area is. And we are blessed with amazing biodiversity. We could interject local knowledge with modern knowledge, like what some of our colleagues have done in India, for example, to bring traditional knowledge to mainstream and generate economy, social well-being, and transform landscapes in a very environmental, impactful manner. So I think this is something that I think Malaysia can leverage upon. And at the 10th plan, actually, Hezri, thanks to colleagues in FRIM, we had documented the traditional knowledge of 14 tribes in Malaysia. The reason for it is two. One is to protect the knowledge system. Second is to disallow misappropriation through undue patents. And that's very important. And one point, since UNDP colleagues are here, some of the most fruitful and very heartwarming projects are those done through the Small Grants Program. It's funded, not more than 50,000 US, but these are grassroots innovation addressing issues of SDGs. So this is something that maybe we can give more emphasis during the midterm review on social innovation. And MOSTI has an agency called Yayasan Inovasi Malaysia, which is trying to spearhead these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nagu. And in the recent budget, there is a an incentive given to government officers who spend time with civil society. They can take some time off work, right? And I wonder, I'm going to get Dr. Nagu to say a bit more. You have 1.7 million, civil servants who in Malaysia. Can we not introduce another KPI, for instance, for in their yearly assessment, so that they can look at sustainability? Would that be possible, you think, so that we can have a huge group of social change agents?
True. I think the civil service is a huge force that can bring change. I mean, there's 1.7 million of us. I think the Tan Sri KSN, the former Tan Sri KSN, came out with a circular, simple, like what Tan Sri Jamila, small step, to make the civil service plastic free, single-use plastic free. And we need to do it. And I applaud the organizers of this event. I did not see a single plastic usage. Fantastic. So I think if every civil society, not civil society, the government agencies at all three levels, federal, state, and local level, could take this initiative and just make one small step, make their event single-use plastic free, that will have tremendous impact on the environment and the social well-being. And you spoke about floods. Many of the floods in Malaysia is actually not caused by global warming. It's caused because plastic sumbat dengan longkang. So you solve the flood problem and EPU tak payah keluar peruntukan berbilion-bilion untuk mengatasi masalah banjir. So this is one take. So that's single-use plastic.
At least 1 billion a year will be saved from that, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Nagu. Of course, then we have the teaching of the younger generation. We have civil service. We have social innovation that we can tap, or we should strengthen the incentive for them. And of course, we can't do that. We can't do much without the private sector pushing, stronger in the climate domain, in the sustainability domain. Datin Sri Sunita, do you see any potential from or you see any big changes coming our way in the last few years?
So, civil businesses have already started engaging with government with our roundtable sessions, which was launched while Nagu was still at CASA. They strongly endorsed this whole of government, all of society approach. And the first roundtable session was on the 12th of April. And it was, I'd like to think it was a huge success. Climate Governance Malaysia organized this in collaboration with the CEO Action Network, which has 51 CEOs to date committed to a much more ambitious sustainability agenda. So the roundtable sessions covered 4 economic sectors in 5 months, 40 plus professionals working on this on a voluntary basis to prime, to curate, and to host these sessions. 50 speakers. We have 1,200 people following the event page, and over 4,200 people attended all of the sessions. So we've prepared the final report. We've presented this to CASA, because CASA is the coordinating ministry. We've written to EPU, MOF, MITI, some of the other key ministries to share, to socialize the high-level findings. And what is very interesting is that there are some very easily actionable policy recommendations which can make transformational shifts in 6 to 9 months' time. These are ideas that have been around. We're trying to create a sort of corporate memory, as it were, so that at least all of society is aware that these solutions are easily available and can be easily implemented without a large budget. So I think for businesses, they need to be very aware that they can be in danger of losing their social license to operate. They need the externalities, for example, the carbon footprint, plastic that we've spoken about. They need to be able to internalize this, the cost of this, and if they can do so and remain profitable, then they are a sustainable business. So I think there are many Malaysian thought leaders who already understand this and want to move much more aggressively so that we can be a thought leader in the region, within our industries, within the global supply chain, and of course a showcase to the world.
The public listed companies would be, of course, you're representing the number of boards of public listed companies. They would be more aware of this than perhaps the medium and small enterprises. How do you get the MSMEs, for instance, to be a party to this as well?
So, there's no one solution, but one of the things that we are doing is we're collaborating closely with SSM. So SSM has over 1 million registered entities, out of which 600,000 are active. I think on their training database, they've got about 20,000 companies that are registered. So we're working closely with them in collaboration with HSBC. We have regional speakers. We're also starting an ASEAN network because there's so much cross-border trade and investment with ASEAN countries as well. So there's so many different initiatives. Really, Hezri, everybody needs to step up and play their role in this.
Right, not just limited to the public listed companies for sure. Yeah, we are still waiting for questions to trickle in, but while waiting, I think we can go another round of picking up a key point. Social innovation, Tan Sri Zakri, how do you see that, particularly in the biodiversity sector in Malaysia? And perhaps are there some lessons out from the other parts of the world that we can learn from to mainstream this?
Well, in fact, there are many. You don't have to go far. You just look at Indonesia or even Thailand, social innovation. There was one anecdote related to me by Professor Emil Salim, one of the living members of the Brundtland Commission. Told me once, how do you get this Indonesian to take care of the forests when the rivers were muddy and dirty? So he called some village leaders and he said, you guys do your prayers, Muslim, 5 times a day. How do you clean yourself with the rivers dirty and polluted? So on that basis, he got this community to leave alone the forests. And so that's one social innovation which was successful in Indonesia, in Sumatra, I think. There'll be many more, even in Sarawak, where this practice of harvesting fish from the river what is that system?
Tagal.
Tagal, that's, I think, is social innovation. But I want to touch on one point, Hezri, before I forget, and that is how do you empower the whole community? We talk about the whole of nation approach, whole of government approach, very rhetorical, right? I worry about this. Even here, we are speaking in English in this air-conditioned room, well-dressed. How about the young people in Ulu Kelantan, Ulu Terengganu, in Sabah and Sarawak? I think we need to tackle them. Maybe some program on social innovation. I myself got interested in science when I was very young. I was born in a village by the fringe of the tropical rainforest. I learned about photosynthesis before I go to school. So that's science, ladies and gentlemen. Can we do that, It's all right to have this kind of discussion here, this elitist discussion. But we also must go out there and tackle things at the very core of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri. I presume the Economic Planning Unit and all the government ministry would be going on roadshows to socialize this, the key tenets or key ideas in the 12th Malaysia Plan further. And of course, this will be a big challenge, but this is the necessary task that we must make to translate the aspirational policy to actionable, tasks on the ground. There is here. I presume we have still about 20 minutes before we have to, wrap the session. There is a question here about the circular economy, and how do we turn this into action? I suppose the targets are there, but what we are referring to here as circular economy being a game changer is that it's not just in the waste management sector or the water sector. It should cut across all that we do, all actions that we do, and it will include government procurements and other hard decisions that we have to make. I would just like to get Dr. Nagu to say a few words about this question about how do you implement this really.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Hezri. Circular economy is not a really new concept, but it's taken mainstream in the 12th Malaysia Plan. And I think that's the only way forward. I mean, while climate action, biodiversity, I think resource usage has to come into a loop. And I think it needs to just not be a solution for circular economy. I think there needs to be also extended producer responsibility. I mean, Malaysia is always flagged as being the 8th most notorious country for misappropriation of plastic. But because there's only one published paper, but I said, if you take the brands of plastics you find in the environment, I will not mention the companies, what are they doing to ensure that their plastic does not end up in environment? So I think to couple the circular economy, you need extended producer responsibility. So a manufacturer should not just think what happens at the user end, but what happens beyond the user end. And this is, I'm glad to note that in Malaysia, we've got ourselves quite organized. I'm thankful to the industry for coming up with MARIA. MARIA is Malaysia Recycle Association. And in CASA, we used to have MASPA, Malaysian Sustainable Plastic Alliance. So we are taking a whole of nation approach at that time to work with the industry to find solutions. It's a complex issue. It needs regulatory, it needs industry. But I think we are already in the pathway there. And I congratulate my colleagues in CASA. I think just yesterday, Hezri, they launched this plastic roadmap, sustainable plastic roadmap. So we are moving there. But from the science perspective, I think MOSTI is also working on new polymers. We are very familiar of the 3 Rs. We like to introduce a 4th R, which is replace. Replace the current hydrocarbon polymers with polymers which are coming from our rainforests. There are many microbes in our rainforest that could harvest fat in terms of palm oil and come out with useful biodegradable polymers that can be introduced as a solution to the plastic problem that we have. So these are what technology and circular economy can match up to provide long-lasting solutions.
So the actions are now being
industry.
detailed out
That's
by
right.
the various ministries.
That's
which is-
right.
which
Thank
is
you.
Great. But I think Datin Sri Sunita would like to add to that.
I think Dr. Nagu has definitely encapsulated some of the key initiatives. Maria was an industry-led initiative, and a lot of the multinationals are involved in that. Many multinationals and businesses also have adopted rivers, especially when their businesses use a lot of water. They want to ensure that the water sources are protected. The Extended Producer Responsibility, EPU, has been having many conversations about this as well, and this should be upcoming very, very soon. I wanted to share an example of a Swedish company called Houdini that takes its responsibility very seriously in terms of planetary boundaries. So before they even create a product, they ask themselves, does this product need to exist? Because a lot of things that we are using, for example, our handphones, are built for obsolescence. So then the producer doesn't have a conduit to take this product back and to be able to recycle this. So at the end of the day, I want us to remember, and CGM is going to organize a series of primers on sustainability. What can you do at home to be more sustainable? Businesses have a big responsibility to play, but it's every single one of us that triggers that purchasing decision, that lifestyle choice that leads to businesses and industries making profits. So we need to be so much more mindful about our lifestyle choices, how we're living, how we're working.
Great, great, very promising. Tan Sri Jamila, please.
I'm going to add another R to yours. I'm going to say rot. We don't realize, I think, that food that goes to the landfill, and 40% of our food goes to landfill, right? How many times you've been to buffets and people take so much food and they don't eat it? Why do we not, why do we allow these behaviors, right? In the hotels and so forth. You're talking about plastic bottles. I have every day I come here and I tell this center not to put plastic bottles. So finally they stop. But the rot bin, right, is that methane is the product of the food that goes to landfill. It doesn't just rot in there. So greenhouse gases, methane is worse than CO2. So if you look at that, then there are some really good social innovations in Malaysia. You've got the Lost Fruit Project that works with the supermarkets and all that, and takes all the ugly fruit and all, and turns it into food for the B40s and so forth. The second one is a very interesting app you can download called Grub Cycle, where they take fruit that's maybe not so pretty, they turn it into jam, they turn it into kimchi. You can also order, it's so-called the ugly fruit, right, from them. So blending technology in the food wastage. But I want to mention one social innovation which I found fascinating in my previous work. So in Jakarta, there's a big problem with plastics and waste blocking the canals and the drains, and therefore they get very severe flooding. Same thing we're having here. So what we did was we funded social innovators, and one of them started to breed what we call black soldier flies. It's a big fly, and it produces waste, which you can collect and sell for fertilizer, organic fertilizer, but it eats plastic. So in a number of years, the drains were no longer clogged. The flooding in that area that they piloted reduced. So imagine now you can actually develop this new business models for young people, and also protects the environment and so on and so forth. So there's so many innovations in Malaysia that we can test as well.
Thank you, Tan Sri. There are so many innovations, but how do we scale up? How do we connect the dots? How do we bring them together? What would be that action that can bring everyone together and begin to scale up in the best practices? Would it be possible to come up with, a end of the year, bring it all kind of conference that highlights these things? These are the kind of ideas that maybe the EPU and the government can consider moving forward. I'm very encouraged to hear about some of these developments that's already happening. But we need an orchestra conductor somehow, in the traditional way of thinking, we'll be creating, we need another government agency to coordinate all this. But I don't think that's the way forward, right? I mean, we can't keep on creating new government agencies to orchestrate this. So there needs to be other ways of coordinating all these different actions. Dr. Nagu, you want to say something? I noticed, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Ezra. I think you see, we have got lots of things happening actually in this country, and startups is something that we are giving a focus to. From mostly, we've got an agency called Cradle, and we just launched a startup platform. So there are many inspiring young Malaysians with amazing, crazy ideas, some of it, but some of it can make it to unicorn status. We have one unicorn now. So we are going to Cradle, the name itself, we're going to handhold them to this platform to hopefully become startups and hopefully become a unicorn. And we are repurposing. I don't think we want to create new agencies because that's not the way to go. We are repurposing Technology Park Malaysia and Magic. Magic was Malaysian Global Innovation and Creativity Center. We are combining them to be a technology commercialization accelerator. You see, I think gone are the days that Malaysia wants to continue to be a user of technology. We want to be a developer of technology, and social innovation plays a huge role. We meet many people with good ideas, but they just do not have the complete how to brand, how to market, how to product. Kadang-kadang benda tu tak banyak, but the way you brand it and package it is important. So we've got a new agency, rebranded, not new, rebranded, repurposed, called Meranti. Meranti is Malaysian Research Accelerator for Technology and Innovation, a combination of TPM and Magic to create this ecosystem to bring Malaysia to the other level. We hope with the support of all other agencies, we will get what you're speaking realized. Thank you. Right.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good institutional innovation. Tan Sri Jamila, please.
I love how Malaysia comes up with wonderful names. I want to say one thing which I forgot, and that's how do you manage data and information? I think this is the piece that probably the 12 Malaysia Plan needs to look at. So you have all these initiatives, and we don't have a lot of coherence. So I always say, when I was preparing for this, I say, what are the 4 C's we need? We need clarity, we need coherence, we need good communications, right? I mean, for good communications, we also need very good, compelling studies and stories. So I think if you can have a database where you can have all this data captured, that is open to public. And I think that we cannot hide data anymore. No, the government must be encouraged to have much more open data platforms where people can learn from, can exchange, can measure, but also as an accountability tool. Because if you take money from grants and all that, you need to also be able to produce results. So I think that, I really strongly encourage that data and information management be focused on as well. The other thing I'm going to say is going to be a bit sensitive. There are many different agencies doing the same things. So how do you have coherence again in the government that perhaps you need to map out what are the key strategies, say the 12 Malaysia Plan as your guide, what are the key strategies that need to happen, what are the key actions, and then assign accountability to whichever ministry. Otherwise, how do you measure the impact of your work? So the impact measurement then becomes extremely difficult.
And perhaps that is why outcome-based management or governance needs. I think the government's already thinking along this. How do you ensure that it cuts across not just ministries but across outcomes? And Tan Sri Zakri, of course, as a seasoned campaigner on environment and biodiversity, even before people started talking about this, the elephant in the room is the federal-state relationship. And of course, some of the states have been more forthcoming than the others in the past few years. But what's your observation? What kind of setup should we venture into moving forward, Tan Sri?
Well, you're absolutely right. The federal-state conundrum is the big elephant in the room. Someone was saying this is not unique. It happened in many countries anyhow. But there are still good prospects ahead. And one of that is this ecological fiscal transfer. I hope that could be realized, really. Because beyond the principle, beyond the aspiration, we need to make things happen. Yeah. And that level of action should be at the state. And then eventually it should be at the local level. You remember, I think Niloy would know, out of Rio, there will be the local agenda 21. I wonder whether we could revisit that and translate that into real things. Because at the end of the day, it's the guy on the ground that really matters, It's not us at KLCC here trying to articulate things. So let's review that. Agenda 21, local Agenda 21 has been effective, and it should be amplified and revisited again. Yeah.
The sort of basis for that is already being established with the low carbon master plan. The government has identified 33 cities to begin with, and perhaps by Tan Sri, what you said about revitalizing the local Agenda 21 spirit could be a way to begin to listen carefully to what's happening on the ground. And the ecological fiscal transfer, as I was made to understand, is already been implemented, but the criteria for the state governments to access that, I don't know whether that's been detailed out. And this will be key, I think. If there can be a good mechanism that there will be 5 million a year for each state is not a bad amount at all for sustainability. There's a whole list of questions. I don't know how much time do we have. I have to look at the organizer. Oh, okay. There's a big counter here. Sorry, I missed that. 25 minutes before. So we have a good time for an exchange with the questions from the audience. There's one on how do we best incentivize public to go for energy efficiency aggressively? I'm looking at Datin Sri Sunita here. And there's also a specific question, can UNDP and EPU work with independent power producers? So I don't know whether any panelists would like to take them up. Dr. Nagu, maybe Datin Sri?
All right, so energy efficiency first. I think Niloy's two graphs were extremely revealing that we need to put a price on things. If we're a water-stressed nation and we're exporting agricultural produce, then we need to price in ecosystem services. If there's a limit to arable land in this country, and after 3 rounds of plantings, after about 75 years, you can no longer use the soil, then we need to be able to price that ecosystem service. And so the same thing comes to electricity. If we want people to use less of something, you need to price it. If something is acknowledged as informed by science that it is a pollutant like carbon, then we need to price it. Because this is how you change behavior patterns. So there's only so much that businesses can do, because at the end of the day, this consumer, everyone in this room, we're making choices that triggers the entire value chain of which businesses will profit out of. Businesses can only do so much, but individuals need to do more. And for that, policymakers need to send the right signals. So I'll give you a very simple example. Is it in our collective national interest to green the grid? If that is the case, should we be subsidizing renewable energy and penalizing fossil fuel sources, for example? Because right now we're subsidizing fossil fuel and we're charging a premium for renewable energy. So these are the sort of very basic things that we need to think hard about if we really want to make this transition. And remember, this is a transition that is going to happen. So we don't want to be a business or an industry or a government that's betting against society succeeding.
Thank you, Dr. Sunita. Dr. Nagu, would you like to add to that?
Thank you, Hazri. I think Sunita captured it quite well, but I'd just like to, this whole move towards renewable energy, we need to be careful as well. Because whenever you drive through certain highways, you see a huge land area used up for solar panels. I think we need to rethink where we need to place these solar panels, because as of 2020, there are about 3.2 million residential homes, based on what I've, 90,000 terrace factories, 21,000 standalone factories. So we've got a lot of rooftops which are not utilized for renewable energy generation. I think rather than taking good quality land, let's look at rooftops to start producing this energy. And I think my colleagues in SEDA have got a potpourri of incentives to get people on board. And I think that's something we need to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Nagu. Tan Sri Jamal, would you like to?
Yeah, I think just to build excellent points by Sunita, really it's the coherence again, right? We say we want to be carbon, net zero carbon, but how do we transition out from fossil fuels? We have to stop using coal. I mean, that's the bottom line. And the other thing, of course, we say we want green transportation, but we build cities that require you to have a vehicle to move from one point to another. So the disconnect is clear. And this is where I was saying that, how do you bring that coherence together? So using the 12 Malaysia Plan, whatever, as that master plan, and knocking heads together, right, to say, okay, you can't develop until you look at these criteria, and therefore our public transportation must improve. Electric vehicles. I've been searching for electric vehicles since I came back last year. It's so expensive. We have Proton and Geely. Why can't we be the biggest producer of electric cars in Southeast Asia? I mean, it makes business sense. So I'm going to come back to political will, right? It has to be driven by political will. And I'm not just saying by politicians, the broader political will, whether it's federal level, state level, and so forth, so that this disconnects and this incoherence that actually exists, we can actually try and narrow that gap.
Thank you, Tan Sri Jamila. The other question is, I think, related to what Tan Sri Zakri raised earlier about the also Tan Sri Jamila, you mentioned about Japan, the case of Japan, how society plays a big role in mainstreaming sustainability or walking the talk. But they say here that the main difference between Malaysia and Japan is discipline, which we lack. And I don't know whether you want to how do you react to that, Tan Sri? How do we get Malaysians to be more, or Tan Sri Jamila? We lack the discipline to, unlike in the Japanese.
I think Malaysians, we love to, self-flagellate ourselves. The fact that everyone in this room is wearing a mask, and when we say our SOPs, please wear a mask and all that, shows that we do have some level of discipline. Are we like the Japanese? Maybe not. But let's build positive narrative. Let's create the conditions for us to have discipline. For us to have discipline, we need to have trust. For us to have trust, we have to say what we do what we say. And I think this is where there has been some disconnects, right? So I think that we have to drive that. The other thing, of course, is education. And I cannot overemphasize education. When I was a schoolgirl, many years ago, ethics, morals, civics were all the most important subjects that we had to attend. And, I went to a missionary school. I still remember every time I pass a teacher, I have to bow my head in respect. And yet we see on the television now that children being bullied in school and beaten up. What has happened? So I think we've got to go back to the root of the rot, and the root of the rot is our education. So we have to address this. This is a very painful thing for me to say, but it has to be said. We have to revamp our education so that we put values into children. Children can get knowledge from the internet easily. They can probably learn faster through YouTube and Google and all that. But they need to be taught values from home and from school.
And how to do that is the million-dollar question that I think we have to grapple with it collectively, not just the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Higher Education, but the whole of nation approach is needed in seeing how we could reform our education system. Tan Sri Zakri, please.
I agree with what Tan Sri Jamila just mentioned about the need to inculcate values. Of course, the school is one of the avenues for that. But also, the system itself has been transformed, and how knowledge is being put up front. It relates to the value system also. I had some videos on YouTube. I scanned through them. If I can get 29 readers reading it, I was already happy. But you look at the website or videos of some of the young starlets, it's in the millions, or whatever is being discussed on the internet. So how do we change that? I don't think this is where I think Japan is more serious than us. We are so mundane, you know. While I still have the floor, Chair, I wanted to raise another issue about how knowledge could be incorporated in what we are trying to do here. And this is the interface between science, and when I say science, it's not only the natural sciences, but it's also the social sciences, humanities, law, or what have you, and connecting to the policymakers, connecting to the political leaders, connecting to the society at large. We talk about this, but there's a lot of disconnect. I kept telling that the science policy interface is the last piece of the jigsaw that would create a more informed, evidence-based society, and eventually also include this element of ethics and morality. When you talk about climate change, you talk about all the other aspects. Sometimes we lost our way because the scientific community is talking to themselves. But in a sense, we are not doing badly. For instance, the establishment of the parliamentary select committees, which has been there for a few years now, I think it's a good step. We should have more of that in our democracy. Yeah.
Thank you, Tan Sri. And there's also this APPGM, All-Party Parliamentary Group for Sustainable Development, which is a very welcome move. And I hope government can continue to support that and expand the kind of business solutioning on the ground, the kind of grants that will be made available. Not just government, but also, if private sector can come and chip in, there will be, a game changer that we are looking for. Datin Sri Sunita and then Tan Sri Jamila. Dr. Nago, yeah.
Right, thank you, Hezri. I'd like to weigh into the subject of education. Mostly plays a lot of role in informal sector and experiential learning. We're trying to make science fun. We've got the Science Center, we've got Planetarium. Now we are doing this Makerspace, and thank you for the recent budget to make us do Makerspace. We're trying to bring science to the B40 group, creating a space where they can also hold, feel, 3D printing and all that, while some makerspace, we're also bringing the traditional social. We're bringing, like the other day, we were in one of the makerspace, we brought this machi machi to do a local cuisine, which had a pot puree of herbs, and the youngsters do not know even 3 of the herbs. And this, besides being a kazana, a heritage, it also has got medicinal values. So this is one. But I think I like to thank Niloy for speaking in Bahasa, not that he wanted to do it, but I think we have got a problem in this in our education system. Science has always been perceived to be in the domain of the English-speaking world, which is wrong. We all know the Eastern world, the likes of India, even our part of the world, has been fronting science thousands of years ago, right? I mean, we've got literatures to that effect. So I think there are many studies showing that a student learns best science in the mother's own tongue, the language, So I think while we grapple on how to teach science either in English or Malay, I think we shouldn't emphasize on using a certain foreign language and make our kids afraid, thinking science belongs to a certain group of elites. So I think while we have got the dual language program, I think we need to look at how India has done it. India has done it perfectly well, where the kid learns science in both languages, and then they become fluent in science in both the mother's tongue as well as English. And I think that's something that we really need to do, because telling that we're going to teach science in English alone is going to take a whole group of people very afraid of this subject. I think that's something that we need to get real with and address it soon, hopefully. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think by extension, it's not just the students outside of Bangsa and Putrajaya, but also the government servants. I mean, I used to head an agency in Langkawi, for instance, and you talk in English, they'll be looking at you with a blank stare. So you have to really be effective in communicating.
Just a point. I mean, I'm not saying, unfortunately, the lingua franca for science is English. So I'm trying to say that we need to develop both. I'm going to use a Malay phrase, memartabatkan bahasa Melayu dalam dunia sains, di samping allowing our students to also learn English, not doing the way where you segregate one group of students learns in English while the big group learns in Malay. I think that's not the way forward. We need to move it in coherent, and I think there are a lot of examples in nearby India which has done it very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nagu. Tan Sri Jamila, you've been waiting. Tan Sri, please.
So I was surprised that we're speaking English on stage because yesterday my entire panel was in Bahasa. So if we are going to move towards speaking in Bahasa only, and we have to respect that there are foreign guests with us, translation, interpretation, simultaneous interpretation is going to be very important. So I love that you have the sign language person, but maybe, auditory interpretation is also important. What was I going to say? I've now completely forgotten what I was going to say.
We'll come back to you. There is one question here or one suggestion here. Boleh tak forum penting seperti ini dilakukan dalam bahasa Malaysia? So as we speak, yeah. So we have about 6 minutes before we have to, wrap up the session. There are many other questions, but a lot of them are pointing to the specific sectors, I think, which can be taken up in other fora. But I think with the last 6 minutes that we have, I would just like to get a round of key takeaway message from each of our wise panelists with all the years of experience they have in advancing sustainability in the different sectors. I would like to start with Tan Sri, Dr. Zakri, if you don't mind, Tan Sri.
Thank you, Chair. As I said at the beginning, I'm very happy and I'd like to congratulate the EPU for developing this Rancangan Malaysia ke-12 in such an integrated, holistic and comprehensive manner. And I think for the first time in a very long while, integrating the 3 pillars of sustainable development. But having said that, I also realize, as YB Menteri mentioned, it may, to a certain extent, be aspirational. So the question for all of us is, how do we walk the talk, So I'm happy if we can get even 50% of those targets realized within this time, but let's begin, And what happened before, those are historical. But the 12 Malaysia Plan, EPU, is something that I think people are happy about. I talked last night to a firebrand NGO friend. I was surprised she was happy with your Rancangan Malaysia ke-12, That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri. This is very, very interesting, isn't it? If a firebrand is happy with the plan, then, there's perhaps it's a good thing, but at the same time, they will be asking for how do you walk the talk? Yeah. This will be the million-dollar question. Tan Sri Jamila, how do we move forward?
Yeah, I join Tan Sri Zakri. Of course, we are both board members of ALAM, so we are very dedicated to making this a reality. That the 12 Malaysia Plan is a fantastic starting point. I think that, really congratulations to EPU. I think the 4 C's I mentioned just now, right? Getting the clarity, making sure that people understand what it is in the simplest terms, getting the coherence at all levels, government, private sector, civil society, the public. And the third thing is communicating it well, and celebrating every success. We have to have hope. I am an incurable optimist, so I feel that, we have such a great starting point now. We all need to make sure that it succeeds, not for the government, not for us. Actually, it's also for our future generations. We owe it to that. One thing I wanted to say now, I remember, is before we started, you saw BTS singing on the lawn of UN. It was right outside my office, my old office. And they have become a real champion for environment. And they have what we call the BTS army. Millions and millions of young people talking about the environment. And I cracked my head to figure out who is the BTS I can find in Malaysia. Maya Karin is the only person that I came about. I think Zainal Abidin, who sang Hijau, I hope he's really believing in environment. So we got to find these people who can influence our young people, make them your ambassadors for the 12 Malaysia Plan, so that kita kan viralkan, the 12 Malaysia Plan supaya orang boleh faham apa dia sebenarnya rancangan Malaysia ke-12. So we at the Sunway Centre, where we've just started in August, we have made it now for Sunway University, the first university in the world, to make planetary health education the fundamental of how the university works. And every student from 2022 will have a mandatory course in planetary health. So the first cohort of graduates in 2024 will all be empowered to understand what planetary health means, and in whatever discipline, whether they're doing mathematics, engineering, business, or art, or culinary science, and how to apply it. So we will be very happy to support EPU in trying to realize this vision and this very, very important plan.
Thank you, Tan Sri Dr. Jamila. So we have to reach out to the social media influencers. We have more than 1 million, or 500,000, 1 million followers, and also to be the champion to spread the message across. Dr. Nago, please.
Right. My quick take-home point is I think we need to look at SDGs in a holistic manner. Every small action helps, and I think it can start with us, like the single-use plastic, as I mentioned earlier. And we need to synergize between climate, biodiversity, environment, social, culture, and economy. And it has to be underscored by a strong science policy interface for a more inclusive development. To do this, we need to deploy and mainstream science, technology, and innovation, including grassroots innovations with core human values, and resource mobilizations to drive SDG in this country in line with the aspirations of 12 Malaysia Plan, not forgetting the Rukun Negara. And I thank EPU for putting the Rukun Negara in the 12 Malaysia Plan. We tend to forget it because it's a fantastic piece of aspiration that we, as a young country in 1957, wanted to achieve. And there are many good provisions in it. And of course, the objectives of Keluarga Malaysia and Wawasan Kemakmuran Bersama. Something that we do not cover, I know we are stretched of time, is something to look at constitutional reforms. Because you Google, you search environment, it does not appear. Maybe the right to clean and healthy environment should make its way to our constitution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nago. We've talked a lot, I think in passing, some of us mentioned the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDG, but there's no mention of ESG, which is very key, a key driver in the corporate sector. Datin Sri Sunita.
Yeah, thank you. And we just celebrated the International Human Rights Day on Friday, where Malaysia was actually a co-sponsor in the 48th session of the Human Rights Council for the right to a safe, clean, healthy, sustainable environment. And there was a long discussion at that session about whether you need constitutional change. But in countries like the Philippines, all you need to do is change the rules of court. And this is something that the AG's chambers can agree to. But as the final speaker in my closing remarks, I just want to remind us again that we're facing a triple crisis of climate, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And this is going to be a huge, huge transformation. You're looking at green steel, green aluminium, food systems, green fertilizer, green concrete. Factories around the world are going to have to change the way they're doing things with new technologies which are still not available right now. And we're not just talking about a net zero target in 2050, we're having to halve our carbon footprint by the end of this decade, which is only 8 years away. And to put that into context, last year with the entire world under lockdown, by law, forcing people to stay in their homes, carbon footprint only fell by 6%. So this halving of emissions by the next decade is a humongous task. So my leaving points, some of the things that I would like EPU to consider, although we've had massive, massive progress just this year alone, we need data to be able to make informed decisions. This data needs to be accurate, timely, and relevant so that businesses, civil society can make decisions about where they work, where they invest, where they live. We need a clear signal from government. Although declaring a net zero target is huge, but we need a clear signal about when emissions need to peak. Because if we need to halve emissions in the next 8 years, it stands to reason that we need to peak before then. And so this is the signal that industries, that investors need when they're assessing, is Malaysia an investment destination or a trading partner that I want to work with? So therefore, all of this needs a massive allocation of resources. We're not talking about money. We're talking about time, attention, and priorities towards the adaptation needs of the nation. Because we're already seeing extreme weather events. We have 1.2 degrees of warming this year in a La Nina year. There's a 40% chance of 1.5 degrees of warming in the next 4 years. And next year will be an El Nino year. So all of this is going to affect industry. Industry is looking to policymakers for their signals. This is a place where EPU can really play a strong role and guide us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sri Sunita. What a way to end this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I think what we have discussed about the four panelists have discussed various issues, but I think we can sum it up into 3 areas of work that needs to be strengthened in the forthcoming years. One is, of course, the institutional hardware, which is, you still need to look at the, the constitutional reform and sort of thing that really look at the better relationship between federal and state, and the ecological fiscal transfer is already the right step in the right direction. But I think what we have scored major point is the software part as well, whereby having sustainability as one of the key objectives of Malaysia Plan. I mean, we have to give a big round of applause to the Economic Planning Unit and also other government agencies for that, courage to put it as a mainstream policy. And last but not least, we have discussed a lot on the hardware, which is HEART ware, which includes, civic education, popular science, education at all levels of society, and this will be the tough road ahead for us to traverse together. And on that note, I would like to invite all of you to thank our 4 eminent speakers, distinguished speakers, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Hazri, and esteemed panelists, in sharing your thoughts on how to move forward in this sustainability journey. I'll kindly invite you to remain on stage. And next, I would like to invite Mr. Niloy Banerjee and Dato' Saiful, the Director General of EPU, to join the esteemed panelists on stage for a photo session. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving another big round of applause to thank the panel speakers for their perspectives. Distinguished panel speakers, you may now return to your seat. Before we conclude, I'd like to invite Ms. Manon Bernier, Deputy Resident Representative, UNDP Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam, to deliver her closing remark. The floor is yours, Ms. Manon.
My Bahasa Malaysia is not as good as the one of Niloy, but salam sejahtera dan selamat tengah hari. It's a beginning, right? Dato' Saiful, Ensik Chekodir, Professor Sakri, Dr. Jamila, Dr. Nagu, Sunita, and Dr. Enzri. Excellencies, distinguished guests, and participants. We came here together today to discuss one central theme of the 12th Malaysia Plan, advancing sustainability. As we heard today, this is not a new theme for Malaysia, neither for the world. But the pandemic has exposed the strain of pursuing unsustainable production and consumption behavior. And there is a renewed sense of urgency and commitment to the sustainability agenda. This year, at the Convention on Biological Diversity, COP15, member states discussed the post-2020 diversity framework, a new set of global biodiversity targets to put a stop to the loss of biodiversity and ecosystems. The recent COP26 has witnessed 197 countries agreed on the Glasgow Climate Pact. More than 100 countries pledged to end and reverse deforestation by 2030. And 100 countries pledged to a global methane pledge to reduce their methane emission by 30% by 2030. And more than 40 countries agreed to end coal-fired power, including major coal countries. Back in Malaysia, the sustainability agenda, as we discussed largely today, is fully integrated in the 12 Malaysia Plan and Budget 2022, and elevated with increased public finance and fiscal incentive, as well as more and more cross-sector partnership for climate and conservation actions. So this dialogue today clearly demonstrated that the government of Malaysia is fully committed to engaging all stakeholders, civil society and private sector to lay down the ground and actions for advancing sustainability. I would really like to thank all the distinguished panel speakers and moderator in making the discussion so substantive, vibrant and solution-oriented. Let me try to see if I can summarize some of the 5 key emerging takeaways from this dialogue. My first takeaway, I think sustainability is key to our survival. Sustainability has become mainstream in the narrative, as we heard today. Sustainability is everywhere. I would even say sustainability is trendy. But we need to be careful when a word is trendy, because it can become redundant after a while if it does not translate into very full concrete action. This is why policy dialogue like today are really a sign that we can translate and find concrete pathways to translate those ideas into solution. Because at the end, sustainability concerns the survival of humanity. Sustainability means addressing the triple crises that are threatening our planet and people: COVID-19, climate change, and loss of biodiversity. Human health and health of our planet are intrinsically linked. There's an urgency to focus on our interconnected relationship with each other and with nature, like Dr. Jamilet clearly explained. And by safeguarding natural ecosystem and harnessing nature-based solutions, we have the opportunity to truly build sustainable pathways. We need to fully embrace the concept of planetary health as we transition towards sustainable and inclusive development. So first takeaway, sustainability is the survival of our planet. The second one, sustainability requires strong institutions that are anchored in a whole of government approach, the hardware that Dr. Hezri just mentioned at the end of the panel. The complexity of these multiple crises now threatening humanity requires the development of more integrated approach and solutions. Strong and cohesive institutions of governance are necessary to the sustainability pathways. Institutions that apply the whole of government approach often are the ones who are the best placed to administer and take decisions for public goods and services in a responsive and prompt manner and adaptive to dynamic and changing circumstances. There were some good proposals as well and suggestions in the panel today. For example, how to make KPIs as well and really integrate in each agencies and in each public servants so that everyone embrace and plan and be measured against sustainability. How do we translate the agenda from the national level to the local level as well, and make sure that there's a whole consortium across ministries, a coherence across ministries, but also from national to local level. The third takeaway is the importance of harnessing science, technology, and innovation to deliver the SDGs. Developing and sharing knowledge through science, research, innovation, improving and disseminating technologies are critical to move the sustainability agenda forward. We need to have an enabling ecosystem and investment to deploy and incentivize the uptake of existing knowledge and new and innovative solutions and technology and make them more available. We discussed a lot during the panel about the role of social innovation, and there is a lot of traditional knowledge in Malaysia that start being documented, and that we can actually inject modern and traditional knowledge to create new social innovation, and that ecosystem needs to be supported. We also talked about, Dr. Zagre also discussed the importance of a stronger connection between the science community and the policymakers, so that we have really science-based informed policymaking. The fourth takeaway, business as usual is not an option, as Sunita has clearly explained. Finance from public and private sector investment can support the transition to low carbon or net zero carbon economy and channel capital to green and clean technology and infrastructure. But the challenge of finance is not just about mobilizing more financial resources. It is more systemic and much deeper than closing a financial gap. The challenge demands the reorientation of how public and private sector interact with each other in a system that achieves the three dimensions of sustainable development: economic, social, and environmental. As Sunita mentioned, profit pool will move substantively in the coming years. 100 trillion of investment will move away from those who are not valuing or embracing sustainability. And there are more and more CEOs that are aware and want to take lead and action. Malaysia can become a leader in the region and in the supply plane. So let's continue and build on those efforts, no? And last but not least, which was highly mentioned in the dialogue, is the power of Rakyat, of people. People hit most from the impact of not moving or embracing sustainability, such as climate change, food insecurity, and others, are the poor, the vulnerable, the marginalized, and the future generation. We really need to rally the power of Rakyat in adopting sustainable consumption patterns and mobilizing the young generation to act on climate change. There's a lot of awareness and a lot of interest for young people to take action. How do we create that space for them to take those actions? We have heard today that we need the role of education, but that we also need to move beyond awareness raising and make sure that this becomes part of the value system in Malaysia. And as the Other Minister was mentioning, that environmental degradation becomes an intolerable practice in the future. And we need to be able to make that link with every one of us. And it goes from how policies decide what to incentivize and what to subsidize. That can also influence people's behavior in consumption. So, by closing, I would like to say that we are in an unprecedented moment in the history of our planet, with warning signs flashing red. But we have the choice to unlock policies, capacities, and finances for social, economic, and environmental transformation needed to rebalance our social and planetary systems so that humans and the planet thrives together. We can make this ambition commitment and targets happening, building forward a better, greener, and fairer future for Malaysia and the world. And UNDP stand ready to walk this journey all together with you. Thank you very much to all of you for attending and actively engaging in this dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mano, for that apt summary delivered with energy and passion. Ladies and gentlemen, I trust you found the discussion rich and scintillating. It is our hope that the session encourages more partnerships and sparks individual actions among us towards green growth, true to the spirit of Keluarga Malaysia. We have now come to the end of our session. On behalf of EPU and UNDP, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for your participation. Thank you once again to all of you in this room and on Facebook. You have all been amazing for making this happen. I ask that you remain seated. Now, EPU and UNDP would like to invite our guests of honor for a luncheon in room 301. Yang Berusaha Datuk Saiful and Mr. Niloy, please lead the way. For all other participants, packed lunch is ready for collection on your way out. Do check out the exhibition on Hall 1 and 2 on ground floor. Goodbye and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. This is Ling signing off from the session.